The sun is shining, the sky is blue, the birds are singing, oh, what a lovely day. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Come with us on this journey about hot topic in the schools and also the worst, the sex education in schools. Based on Advocates for Youth website, sex education is the provision of information about bodily development, sexuality, and relationship, along with skills building to help young people communicate about and make informed decisions regarding sex and their sexual health. Sex education should occur throughout the students' grade levels with information appropriate to students' development and cultural background. It should include information about puberty and reproduction, abstinence, contraception and condoms, relationship, sexual violence prevention, body image, gender identity, and sexual orientation. It should be taught by trained teachers. Sex education should be informed by evidence of what works best to prevent unintended pregnancies and sexually transmitted infection. But it should also respect young people's right to complete and honest information. Sex education should treat sexual development as normal, natural part of human development. Nowadays, we can see in the news and also social media, there's a lot of rape among young kids. On November 16, 2019, 7 Form 5 students have been arrested to help in the probe into alleged rape of a Form 2 student in Tawau Sabah. How is this happen? The biggest issues are there were 3,293 new cases of HIV among legends last year, says Deputy Health Minister Dr. Lee Boon Chye, and out of that number, 47 of them consist of children below the age of 18. Isn't it awful? It's really gross for me. This has happened because of lack of knowledge about sex. Perhaps maybe a 7-year-old kid never know what adults doing towards them, especially when they have been touched at sensitive part just because they don't know what sex is about. Plus, it will lead to baby dumping and abortion. Based on the Start Online, over 1,000 baby dumping cases from 2010 to May 2019, and over 64% of the babies were found dead. It is really disgusting, and we need to stop it from being a part of youngsters' habit, especially sex. We need to prevent it from becoming more serious and critical. But first, before we start our discussion, let me introduce our panelists. Our first panelist is Ms. Amira. Good morning.
Good morning.
Our second panelist, Ms. Monisha.
Good morning, moderator.
Good morning. Our third panelist, Ms. Jinisha.
Good morning.
And our last panel is Ms. Sylvia. So, let us continue our discussion. So, my first question to Ms. Amira. It is said that the sex education need to be exposed to the children as their age is the best age to educate them, right? It is also said that school is the best place for sex education to be exposed to children as they spend their time the most at schools instead of at home. I agree with this statement, Ms. Amira.
Thank you, Ms. Moderator Lynn, and good morning to my fellow panelists. I am totally agree with the statement that sex education needs to be exposed in school. First, let me explain first. Sex education is access to comprehensive, medically accurate sex education, and it is a human right to study of sex education. This is because sex plays a big part in someone's life. Even if you do not plan to be sexually active, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't learn about sex, anatomy and contraceptive, and the other topics that make up sex education. Sex will happen with or without sex education. That is why sex education needs to be exposed in school so that it will not lead to negative effect. So moving on to my first point, I would like to highlight the importance of sex education in school. The importance of sex education in school is to give exposure to HIV awareness at an early age. This is because, based on World Health Organization (WHO), currently over 30% of the new HIV infection occur among 15 to 25 years old. Not to mention adults. In 2017, there were 22,000 new HIV infections occur among adults in Morocco. However, young adults are likely to get HIV infection because of their young age. Sex education needs to be exposed to all age groups because, especially early age, to focus on prevention and early intervention in other health risk behavior that may lead to HIV. Obviously, HIV can lead to death, right? Not only to mom, but also the child in pregnancy. This not only occur on teens but also adults because lack of information on this problem. That is why sex education needs to be exposed since early age.
Thank you, Ms. Amira. What a deep explanation that you have just said about. So based on what Ms. Amira said before, sex education benefits the student. So my question for Ms. Monisha, our second panel, based on what she said before, sex education benefits the student. So do you agree with her statement?
I disagree with her statement. I believe that sex education should not be practiced in schools because sex education at early ages states the modesty of the students. Providing sex education in school is a way of giving out license for immoral sexual behaviors. For a fact, sex education in Iran is closely related to premarital sexual abstinence, especially for women. They think that if sex education is given, sexual showers will happen and people will not be able to control themselves. Students might think that premarital sexual behavior as an ethical phenomena, leading their modesty to be destroyed. And sex education is involved more than just plumbing and birth control pills. The students might increase an underage conceptions, where the schools might spread a wrong message to students by teaching them how to do it and how not to get caught, by giving them sex education lessons. And I believe that sex education is something insensitive and harmful for students. Forcing girls and boys to listen to view or openly discuss about the sexual functioning of the opposite sex anatomy, while in their presence is embarrassing, it contributes to their breakdown of modesty boundaries, which is natural and appropriate for a human being. So I suggest that instead of giving out sex education, religious education or chastity education should be practiced, because religious education, it goes beyond the physical, biological or hormonal aspects. It goes much further than just psychological and sociological considerations. It enters the world of one's heart and soul and purifies them. This kind of education actually it's about virtues rather than just techniques. It focuses more on the maturation of the students themselves, which students might need the most at this kind of times.
Thank you, Ms. Monisha. So for our third panel, as we read in the news, there's a lot of rape cases happen towards children at the age of they don't know what's good and what's bad. Instead, these cases happen by someone that they know, such as their family, as them for being naked in front of the adult and showing their pussy and ass. It's really disgusting to think about how awful the adult nowadays that want to do sex with the children, even their own children. So, Ms. Janisha, do you agree if I state that sex education is in need so that the youngsters can get exposed with this knowledge at a young age?
Thank you, Linda, moderator. Good morning, my fellow panelists. I agree with your opinions that the pros and cons of sex education towards society. But in my opinion, I totally agree that besides towards the society, there are also a lot of benefits on sex education to the students individually. First and foremost, the main point is giving young people basic information from an early age. In an article, More to Sexuality Education, by Kapil Singh, published on January 2019, the author mentioned that, according to a BBC report, referred to a failure quality control, pointing out the general misunderstanding on sex education is still low. For example, when they're young, children can be educated on how people grow, reproduce, change over time, such as puberty and aging. They will learn how to manage the physical changes to their bodies and how they progress from different stages in their lives. Thus, sex education has positive effects and teach on how students' choices affects their whole well-being. Moreover, students understand healthy and unhealthy relationships. Maintaining a healthy relationships requires many skills that many young people never thought, like positive communication, conflict management, negotiating decisions around sexual activity. A lack of these skills can lead to unhealthy and even violent relationships among youth. So, sex education teaches students to understand and identify healthy and unhealthy relationship needs, also effective ways to communicate relationship patterns and manage conflict, the strategies to avoid or end unhealthy relationships. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tanisha. So, what I can conclude from what you have explained before is it gives sex education is good as it gives young people basic information from an early stage. So, my question for our panel, Ms. Sylvia. So, do you agree with your statement saying that it gives young people basic information?
Okay, thank you, Ms. Moderator. I totally disagree with Ms. Janisha's opinion. This is because although sex education is well documented around the world, but it is still remain controversial. The disadvantage of sex education in schools towards an individual is it could operate as an sexual stimulus. With providing sex education, books or classes will become a channel for people's sexual gratification. Sexual gratification is a need or want for sexual behavior from someone specific. Sex education is not like education of history or geography. With getting information, it is possible that they desire to engage in sexual behavior. With providing primary information about sexuality will stimulate people's curiosity to search for more sexuality information. Sex education could indeed corrupt students' moral standing and incline them to engage in sex activities. Sex education programs give students information which may result in sexual ideas or experimentation among some students. Since sex education is provided in a very neutral environment, students are lack in guidance on the matter and are left to do with whatever they are left to do whatever they want with the information provided. It is nearly impossible to provide sex education in a safe environment, and this is result in children turning adventurous and venturing into exploring sex through new channels, which they are unaware of the consequences.
Thank you, Ms. Sylvia. So, back to our first panel. It is said that immoral action caused by misjudging so that the sex education in school is important to society. So, do you agree with this statement?
Thank you, Ms. Moderator. I am absolutely agree with that statement. This is because sex education is important to avoid immoral action, which is sex, caused by misjudged decision. Nowadays, abortion among societies are very common. This is because their misjudged decision does lead to immoral action such as abortion, unwanted pregnancy, early marriage, and also commit suicide and so on. Based on article in Morocco, they perform abstinence-only sex education. However, UNESCO clearly stated that there is no clear evidence that this procedure will work. This is because it raises more questions than answers. That is why teacher plays a big role in this problem. In Chile, they created scripted lessons for teachers, while in Tanzania, they created online resources for teachers in doubt. I am 100% agree with UNESCO because just by telling students that sex outside of marriage can lead to hell will not give them the answer that they wanted, because students nowadays want scientific reasons why they shouldn't have sex outside of marriage. As we all know that sex can lead to HIV. and also they will, as I said just now, misjudge decision, which is abortion, unwanted pregnancy, early marriage, and commit suicide. That is what I meant by my first reason. Although most of the students will follow the advice, but some of them will not follow it. Due to this lack of information, they will make decisions that will take effect throughout their whole life and their dreams, because they wanted to know the answer of their question, so they will experience it themselves so that they will know the answer. One of possibilities of immoral action is misjudged decision that I said just now, is that they feel pressure by their partner due to abusive experience. So if they experience this type of problem, which is abusive experience, they will not know what action they will take. They have to take. For example, if they felt abusive experience, so of course they should tell people that they trusted or tell the police directly. But they are afraid that their action will make the situation more worse. So which is not. So that is why sex education is important. So that they will know what action to take if they experience this type of problem. By experience this problem, it will create mutual respect in both gender.
Thank you, Ms. Mira, for the explanation of immoral action caused by misjudged decision. So my question for our second panel, Ms. Monisha. Nowadays, LGBT has become a huge issue in the universe. Instead, now they even fight for their rights, even they know that it's opposed the universe law. Some say that sex education educate them to fight against international law because they learn about their rights in the sex education system. So, Ms. Monisha, is it true that sex education exposure to LGBT?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Moderator. It's true that sex education gives exposure of LGBT to students. Research has illustrated that sex education courses present LGBT issues in a negative light, portraying the LGBT individuals and LGBT sexuality as something sick and abnormal. And this is why most of the opponents of sex education have argued that sex education actually leads to the damaging information to the students. Because students who learn about LGBT issues in sex education, they have higher possibility to engage in same-sex practices, even become homosexual, bisexual, or transgender. And when we look at the teachers who teach the sex education, if the teachers encourage the LGBT practices, they might be a reason to change the sexual orientation or gender identity of the students. And in contrast, if the teachers discourage the students in LGBT practices, students who are already involved in hormonal problems or closely related to the LGBT practices, they might feel unaccepted in the society. And as we all know, besides that, sex education for students need their parents' approval, and most of the parents, they discourage this kind of education to be taught in schools at their young ages, because what is taught behind the doors of the sex education classes can never be known by their parents. This means there is absolutely no way for them to control or even find out what their children are being taught unless they sit in the classroom alongside with their children and present for each and every classes. The primary teachers of their children is their parents. So I feel like it is their rights and their responsibility to teach sexual morality for their children at the right age, which they think is accurate for their children.
Thank you, Ms. Monisha. So, basically, you just said that parents is the best teachers for the children to learn sex education. So, my question for Ms. Tanisha, our third panel. Is it true that understand the impacts of sex in their life is important?
Thank you, the moderator. Yes, I'm agree that the sex education, because of sex education, children understand the impacts of sex in their lives. At Peter Day, the author of an article, Pros and Cons of Sexual Education, mentioned that child sexual abuse is a social malaise. It is curbing the incidence of abuse as through this medium. It can be made aware of the differences between good and bad touch. Sex education become an answer for all the questions to the students regarding to their body changes and hormonal surges. So it's much better to teach children about sexual health in school rather than letting them use other resources such as pornographic materials or internet, which is a huge store of information to get to know about sexuality that might be misleading. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Janisha, for your opinion. And our last panel, Ms. Sylvia. So, based on what we have discussed before, why Ms. Janisha has thought that it is good for the children for being exposed with this sex education. But in Malaysia itself, since mostly our majority is Islam, religion Islam, so it has religion issue. So we don't apply it in our education system. A lot of teachers said that Malaysians are not suitable for this education. But sex education has become very important with an increasing number of abortion, and mostly it consists of students. The risk of unwanted pregnancies and sexually transmitted infection are far too high from the expected one, particularly among LGBT and also the student itself. So, Ms. Sylvia, may I know your opinion? What does teachers in Malaysia think for opposing this sex education system after what had happened in the world?
Okay, thank you, moderator. Let me share some information which I retrieved from a newspaper article. According to the Star News, Malaysian teachers says no to sex education. This is because they lack informal training of the complexity and sensitivity of sex education. Loh Kim Peng, General Secretary of National Union of Teaching Profession, said that teachers lack professional training in teaching the subject. Teachers are not always adequately trained to teach sex education as they are unsure of the content and forms of the subject. It may violate their own belief or morals on the subject rather than continuing with the facts. When teachers are given the responsibility to teach sex education to the students, they are run the risk of having their information misinterpreted by the students. Most schools only teach sex education has a brief interlude in physical education or health classes. So this is not enough to relate effectively to serious matter. We all can't deny that we can listen to hours and hours of lectures or about any topic, but finally we do exactly what we want. So unfortunately, it same goes to sex education. Students may listen to lectures about sex education going on and on, but in the end engage in unsafe sex. So research shows us of those who begin sex by the age of 18, almost half of them had a course and 2/5 had instruction on birth control. So what is the point of providing this information to children at such early age if they still ended up engaging in sexual activities? They will justify that they learn it in school, and if teachers did not want them to engage in sexual activities, they should have never brought it up about the topic at the first place. So I'm not saying that teachers are the only reason for the disadvantage of sexual education in schools, but they are lack in professional training, and also when they providing the information, it is less effective. So in my opinion, it is not proper to expose students to sex education at such an early age, because curiosity can make them take foolish steps which they will undoubtedly regret later.
Thank you, Miss Cynthia, for your deep explanation about it. So basically, what I've concluded is that most of us are not agree, and also there's a few of us agree about this sex education system can be applied in Malaysia. So now we know that actually sex education is really important, and we really need to implement it in our education system. Actually, the society need to be open-minded, since especially in Malaysia it's also close-minded. Say they, as what Miss Sylvia said, that the teachers against it. So I guess that we all need to be open-minded and need to think the goods of what we will get with the system. Perhaps the rate of baby dumping can be decreased, no abortion, and free from HIV and AIDS. In my opinion, it's myself, we need to check Finland education system, since they are the best. They will work for the best education system in the world, and they put this sex education as one of their education system, especially in school, and not in Malaysia. At least Finland doesn't have lots of abortion cases, opposite from Malaysia, even though Malaysia not implement this education system. That's the main reason why Malaysia needs to think from many aspects and not from just one aspect. And if we think outside of the box, we might will know and realize that how important sex education system is. Finally, we have come to end of our forum. Thank you to all our panel today. And we have shared a lot of knowledge for this sex education system, this topic. So for the last word for me, Malaysia is free from HIV and AIDS, and let's go for sex education. Thank you.